A cosmic Empress walks into a dim maintenance alcove and finds a human mechanic studying quantum propulsion by flashlight. What happens next will shatter centuries of interstellar prejudice. Viala, disguised as a low-ranking Teresian diplomat, never expected to find brilliance in the shadows. But when Thomas Harker's hands, marked by years of labor, flip through graduate-level manuals, she realizes the hegemony's greatest sin: wasting talent based on birthright alone. The words followed Viala through the palace corridors like a ghost. The throne sees only what courtiers wish it to see. Her mentor's final warning, spoken between bloody coughs in the medbay, carried more truth than hundreds of royal briefings. Beneath the vaulted ceilings of the imperial residence, advisors murmured about trade routes and rebellions, never about the human crews maintaining those ships. The palace's golden filigree patterns seemed to shift when she looked directly at them, an optical illusion mirroring how facts bent around noble prejudices. 3 security checkpoints stood between Viala's chambers and her private shuttle. The log showed 17 unauthorized trips labeled cultural research, each to human sectors where no diplomat would normally venture. Palace protocol officers had stopped questioning these excursions after the 3rd faked clearance document. Her mentor's files provided context. The Proxima incident reports, buried in classified archives, told a different story from the official narrative of human technological inferiority. Teresian survey teams had misinterpreted human colony ships as derelicts, triggering first contact hostilities. 2 centuries later, nursery rhymes still taught children to mock human steam-age thinking. The caste documentation made it explicit. 7 generations of hegemony policy tied advancement to lineage charts rather than skills testing. Promotion boards automatically rejected applications lacking noble sigils, regardless of submitted work. Department supervisors received bonuses for keeping human crew quotas below 12% in technical roles. Viala's disguise kit weighed heavily in her travel satchel. Molecular skin modulators could shift her crimson pigmentation to muted burgundy in 37 seconds. Vocal dampeners compressed her natural harmonic resonance into the flat tones of a mid-rank diplomat. Even her bioluminescent royal markings could be suppressed for 4 standard hours at a time. Security protocols scrolled across her private display. 27 confirmed assassination vectors for incognito rulers, poisoned ration packs, sabotaged airlocks, even cognitive hacking via public terminal interfaces. The risk analysis algorithms recommended 12 armed guards for any undocumented off-palace movement. She closed the file after memorizing the evacuation routes. Diplomatic cables told the missing piece. Human outpost supply requests filtered through 3 Teresian oversight committees before approval. Standard equipment allocations arrived with 30% missing components, forcing crews to cannibalize other systems. One station's atmospheric processor ran on patched-together parts for 14 months before catastrophic failure. Her fingers trembled slightly as she disabled the shuttle's tracking module. The resistance came not from fear, but from the dawning realization of how thoroughly the system had been designed to overlook certain lives. Star charts showed 12 human majority colonies within range, all classified as resource extraction zones despite their research facilities' published work. The final piece clicked into place when she accessed Thomas Harker's personnel file. His 17 denied transfer requests all cited species role compliance as the rejection reason. Educational waivers required noble sponsorship, a fact buried in subsection 14 of the Imperial Codex. His maintenance logs, however, showed 14 documented system optimizations, including a thruster recalculation that saved an entire harvest shipment. Palace clocks marked first shift when she sealed the disguise protocols. The molecular suppressants itched as they bonded with her epidermal layer. In 12 hours, Administrator Hole would receive an unsigned data package containing propulsion efficiency calculations, along with the 18 other ignored innovations. Buried in maintenance deck reports, Security Chief Weber's latest incident report flashed on her abandoned console. Unusual Teresian presence in human sector glowed amber under the priority tag. Palace guards would discover her missing chambers at morning inspection. By then, a supposedly low-ranking diplomatic aide would be halfway to Artemis Station, her royal insignia hidden beneath a borrowed technician's vest. The hum of Artemis Station's atmospheric processors filled the corridors as Viala moved unseen through the human sectors. Her ocular implants flickered with data, work logs, crew rotations, hazard reports. The numbers told a story the Empire preferred to ignore. 83% of cryogenic maintenance tasks landed on human teams. 97% of accident reports came from those same sectors. She paused by a tattered notice still pinned to a bulkhead after years of neglect. The faded image showed a human figure with exaggerated, clumsy hands reaching toward delicate Teresian technology. The warning text beneath had been amended over time, crude engravings deepening the original message. Keep them away from critical systems. Nearby, a child's voice echoed from an open dormitory hatch, singing a rhyme about clanky human junk heaps in lilting Teresian cadences. The Proxima incident report surfaced in her neural display, 247 standard years of official records, all citing the same turning point. A human repair team's misunderstood protocol had been reframed as sabotage. A malfunctioning airlock became attempted genocide in Imperial retellings. She cross-referenced the logs with Thomas's personnel file. 17 education transfer requests. Each denial cited the same regulation. Article 14B, species-specific technical aptitude thresholds. A shift change alarm sounded. Viala watched through a service grate as crews swapped posts. Teresian supervisors carried data slates and wore environment suits rated for zero contamination exposure. The human workers hauled toolkit belts with mismatched components, their gloves patched at the palms. One coughed violently into their sleeve, a symptom of the filtration bypass their sector tolerated to save on scrubber maintenance. Station manifests scrolled past her vision. Hazard pay differentials showed humans earning 0.3 credits per radiation exposure incident, while their Teresian overseers collected full hazard bonuses for paperwork approvals. Life support schedules revealed human quarters cycled last during atmospheric purges. The numbers blurred into a pattern as old as the hegemony itself. Systematic erosion disguised as natural order. Thomas's file held one more entry she hadn't noticed before. A juvenile disciplinary note from his academy days. Infraction. Corrected instructor's propulsion diagram during examination. Resolution. Reassigned to manual labor track. The date matched the Proxima incident's 73rd anniversary, when Imperial schools had intensified their practical aptitude evaluations for human students. Viala's palm rested against the cold bulkhead as the station's gravity plating vibrated underfoot. Somewhere in that maze of corridors and crawl spaces, a man who could realign quantum field generators spent his night squinting at smuggled manuals under a dying flashlight. The Empire called this efficiency. The math called it something else. Entirely. A new notification appeared. Administrator. Holay's upcoming review of human resource allocations. The attached proposal recommended extending maintenance shifts to cover budget shortfalls. The numbers all balanced perfectly, save for one column. Projected attrition rates. That figure came with its own quiet footnote. Within acceptable tolerances. Air circulators wheezed through the vents above her. The sound mirrored the failing flashlight's rhythm in Thomas's alcove, short bursts of function between longer stretches of darkness. The flickering light caught Viala's attention 3 corridors into her patrol, an irregular pulse escaping from a half-shut maintenance hatch. She moved closer, silent in her Teresian diplomatic boots. The illumination stuttered like a failing heartbeat, throwing jagged shadows across pipes and circuit housings. Thomas Harker sat wedged between a coolant relay and a stack of discarded insulator panels. His left hand cradled a battered flashlight, fingers tapping the casing every few seconds to keep the beam alive. His right turned pages in a manual so thick it barely fit in the alcove. Quantum propulsion equations filled the margins in precise, cramped handwriting. Grease streaked his coveralls from elbow to knee, dark smears blending with the fabric's faded blue. 2 wrench handles poked from his thigh pocket, one standard issue, the other clearly hand-forged from salvaged components. The manual itself showed signs of repeated repairs, its spine reinforced with strips of binding tape. Page 817 lay open, detailing resonance frequencies for warp containment fields. Viala's initial intrigue sharpened into suspicion. No human in the hegemony held clearance for this material. Her disguise protocol routines activated instinctively, scanning for recording devices or hidden weapons. The alcove registered clean, just a man, a book, and failing equipment. Thomas adjusted the flashlight again. This time she saw his method, a partial twist of the power cell housing whenever the beam dimmed. His fingertips showed old burns along the knuckles, the patterns matching tool slippage on overheated conduits. A coil of insulated wire lay half-strung around his boots, one end spliced into a makeshift charger for his fading light source. He reached absently for a stylus behind his ear, pausing to frown at a derivation on the page. The stylus tip hovered, then scratched out a correction to the printed formula. Viala's ocular implants cross-referenced his notation. The manual contained a typesetting error in the tensor calculus, one that had slipped past 3 imperial editions. A mistake most academy graduates never caught. The flashlight guttered. Thomas exhaled through his nose and gave the casing 2 precise taps near the emitter. The light stabilized for another 30 seconds. His movements held the efficient certainty of someone who'd performed this ritual countless times. Under the workbench, a small power cell sat cradled in a jury-rigged induction cradle, likely scavenged from decommissioned equipment. Viala's boot scuffed the deck plating. Thomas snapped the manual shut, his shoulders tensing before he controlled the reaction. When he turned, his eyes went first to her diplomatic insignia, then to the concealed data port on her forearm where an Imperial agent might carry scanners. His right hand drifted toward the wrench in his pocket. "Diplomatic corridors 2 levels up," he said. The words came flat, prepared. A speech he'd given before to other curious officials. The manual's edge peeked from beneath his arm. Viala recognized the Imperial seal on its cover, the restricted access symbol half scratched away by wear. 23 other volumes sat stacked under the bench, their spines bearing the coded classification marks of advanced engineering curricula. Each showed similar signs of heavy use. Thomas tracked her gaze. His fingers tightened on the wrench. Every line of his posture telegraphed readiness for disciplinary action. The alcove's single overhead light chose that moment to fail completely, plunging them into the flashlight's uneven glow. In the flickering dark, Viala made her decision. She reached past him and tapped the manual's open page. "Your correction to equation 17 is valid but incomplete." Her disguised vocal modulators hid the Imperial cadence as she pointed to the flawed term. "You're missing the tachyon damping coefficient." The wrench stayed in his pocket. Thomas studied her finger on the page, then the diplomatic insignia again. This time his scrutiny lingered on her hands, the one part of her disguise that couldn't fully mask generational Teresian physiology. His eyes narrowed fractionally. The flashlight died for 5 full seconds before he revived it. In that total darkness, neither moved. When the light returned, Viala found Thomas watching her with an expression no disciplinary report could classify, the look of someone recalculating every assumption about their place in the universe. He turned back to the manual. "Show me." Thomas flipped open a dented translator unit, its casing streaked with carbon scoring from repeated repairs. He worked without looking, hands moving between components with unconscious precision. A salvaged resonator from a comms array replaced the original burnt-out module. 2 stripped data conduits bridged the gap between incompatible Teresian and human interface ports. Beneath the workbench, a notebook lay open to schematics of the station's life support systems. Thomas's handwriting crowded the margins with equations. His redesign of the oxygen recyclers used 40% fewer parts than the Imperial Standard model. The modifications compensated for aging filters without full replacements, something the station's budget hadn't allowed in 7 standard years. Viala's ocular implants scanned the translator's new configuration. The system diagnostics appeared on her display, charting performance metrics against factory specifications. Power consumption dropped 23%. Signal clarity improved across all linguistic registers. A sidebar noted the design bore no engineering seals, just Thomas's initials and a date from 9 months prior. Station logs scrolled in her peripheral vision. 13 documented system failures resolved without official work orders. Reactor coolant vents cleared during a near overheat in Sector 12. Gravity plating recalibrated after a malfunction sent 3 Teresian officers to medical. Each incident report listed the fix as spontaneous system recalibration with no technician credited. The translator emitted a confirmation chime. Thomas tapped its side panel twice. The device projected a perfect Imperial high tongue greeting, then flawlessly shifted to Viala's disguised regional dialect without the usual half-second lag. Modified the phoneme buffer, he said, not looking up from reassembling the casing. Standard units waste cycles double-checking honorific algorithms. His fingers aligned the housing seams with the same care an Academy engineer might show calibrating warp coils. Viala accessed maintenance protocols for comparison. The Empire's official solution for aging translator units involved complete replacements at 8,000 credits each. She cross-referenced Thomas's parts list. Total material cost 47 credits, mostly spent on non-recyclable isolator chips. A status update flashed across her display. Live support efficiency metrics, quarter 318. The numbers confirmed what his notebook suggested. Human-occupied sections showed unexplained 18% improvements in atmospheric stability. The report's footnote attributed this to favorable environmental conditions. Thomas wiped grease from his hands onto already stained coveralls. His toolkit contained 3 handmade implements for accessing restricted maintenance panels. The forged wrench from earlier lay beside a curved probe fashioned from a broken data spike. Each bore the microscopic nicks of hundreds of unauthorized repairs. Off-duty crew members passed the open hatch outside, their laughter filtering through the door. One voice rose above the others. "Harker's playing engineer again." The words carried neither malice nor approval, just weary resignation to a running joke older than Artemis Station itself. Viala pulled up the station's duty roster. Thomas's assignment history showed 17 consecutive rotations in high radiation maintenance zones. His medical file listed 6 separate decontamination procedures. Each incident report included the same boilerplate. Worker failed to utilize proper safety protocols, despite logs proving the radiation alarms had malfunctioned every time. The translator's reactivated holo display now ran 2 diagnostic streams simultaneously. Left screen, original Imperial firmware struggling with a complex grammatical construct. Right screen, Thomas's modified algorithm processing the same data with streamlined syntax trees. A proximity alert chimed softly in Viala's neural feed. Security Chief Weber's biosignatures approached from the cross corridor. She watched. Thomas's shoulders tense a half-second before his hands continued working. Awareness without visible reaction. His notebook's edge curled where he dog-eared a page on thruster balancing equations. The opposing page held a sketch of Artemis Station's docking array, with 12 efficiency tweaks inked in red. Estimated fuel savings per cycle, 3,400 liters. The approaching footsteps slowed near the alcove entrance. Thomas closed the translator's casing with a quiet snap and slid it into the repair queue. His face betrayed nothing, but the stylus in his left hand kept perfect rhythm, with the fading flashlight's remaining charge, counting down seconds, until darkness or discovery. Viala's gaze lingered on the notebook before the data feed vanished from her display. The Empire's blind spot wasn't technical oversight or bureaucratic inefficiency. It was this: a man who could rebuild their machines better than their architects, relegated to shadows where innovation went unrecognized because recognition required first being seen. The security feed played on loop across 3 monitors in Weber's office, grainy footage of a Teresian diplomat lingering near maintenance hatch. E47. The timestamp showed 0238 station time. Noteworthy enough for a first flag. Then the sequence repeated. Same diplomat, same sector, 4 nights running. Station protocol required immediate reports on any upper-tier species showing unusual interest in human workspaces. Weber's initial filing had been routine, but when cross-referencing the log showed 17 similar incidents across the quarter, he'd tagged the feed for secondary review. Now he zoomed in on the diplomat's hands during a conversation with Technician Harker. No data exchange visible, but something passed between them. A tension in the Teresian's posture that didn't match diplomatic etiquette. Thomas found the notice slipped into his locker between shift rotations. Standard security office lettering, no signature. Reminder: Article 14D prohibits maintenance personnel from engaging off-duty with diplomatic staff. First offense, reassignment. Second offense, contract termination. The laminate stuck to his fingers slightly, still warm from the printer. Viala's ocular implants, alerted her to the surveillance. Subroutine the moment she entered Sector 9. 3 new cameras tracked her movements where only passive scanners had operated before. She adjusted her shawl, an unremarkable gesture that let her fingers brush the molecular stabilizer beneath her collar. The disguise matrix held at 94% integrity, but recent emotional spikes had caused minor fluctuations in her epidermal bioluminescence. Weber pulled Thomas's file during third watch. The disciplinary record was thin. A few warnings for unauthorized tool modifications, 1 late return from medical leave. Nothing remarkable except the sheer volume of commendation requests from human supervisors. 17 in 3 years, all denied at the administrator level for lack of proper certification. The camera over hatch E47 had developed a malfunction during Thomas's last shift there. Weber checked the repair log. Work order listed as completed by Technician Harker. The timestamp showed he'd fixed it within 8 minutes of reporting the issue himself. Too convenient. Viala felt the flare coming too late. Thomas had just demonstrated an elegant solution to the comm array interference problem. One that sidestepped expensive hardware upgrades by rerouting signal paths through existing conduits. Her approving nod triggered a brief cascade of royal crimson across her disguised cheekbones. She turned into the alcove's shadows before it became visible to human eyes. But not before Thomas's puzzled frown suggested he'd caught something in his peripheral vision. Weber's security console chimed with an alert from the linguistic analysis filter. A routine scan of Thomas's recent comms had flagged anomalous syntax patterns, phrases matching known imperial engineering pedagogy rather than human technical dialects. The system suggested a 73% probability of hidden mentorship. Thomas wiped grease from his hands, watching the Teresian diplomat too carefully. There were tells, the way she unconsciously angled her feet in formal stance during conversations, the subtle precision of her gestures when pointing out technical flaws. No low-level functionary moved like that. He tested a theory, deliberately misaligning a power relay during their next discussion. Her immediate correction used terminology from advanced academy curricula. The station's internal sensors registered a data burst from Weber's terminal to Administrator Holai's private channel. The encrypted packets contained 3 files: Thomas's annotated efficiency reports, security footage of his alcove meetings, and a cross-species fraternization citation form pre-filled with termination codes. Viala's neural feed alerted her to the transmission the moment it hit the network. Her decryption routines worked swiftly, but not swiftly enough. Holai's response came within 90 seconds, a terse approval for immediate remedial action per regulation. 14D3. The attached enforcement protocols listed hull maintenance duty as standard punitive reassignment. Thomas found the second notice waiting after his next shift. This one included a detailed list of his infractions: possession of restricted technical materials, unauthorized system modifications, suspected data transfer. The punishment assignment specified external thruster maintenance, a notorious high radiation post. His sister Lucas's student visa renewal paperwork lay beside the notice, now stamped, pending review. Viala's disguise stabilizer beeped a low warning. Stress-induced fluctuations were increasing. She ran a diagnostic and found traces of an active scan against her identity files, Weber's security credentials appearing in the access logs. Her countermeasures could hold for perhaps 3 more days at this intensity. The hull maintenance roster scrolled across the display in Weber's office, radiation zone assignments highlighted in warning yellow. Section 12 thruster arrays flashed red, 43% injury rate for human crews over the past quarter. Thomas Harker's name appeared beside the 0400 shift, the scheduling algorithm slotting him in with mechanical indifference. Viala pulled the disciplinary codes while monitoring station chatter. Article 14D violations carried mandatory reassignment protocols. 1 infraction: docked pay and upgraded radiation monitoring. 2. External maintenance duty with hazard pay suspension. 3. Contract termination and forfeiture of dependent privileges, including Lucas Harker's xenobiology study visa. Thomas sat in his quarters reviewing the notice. The mandatory waiver form listed 17 types of hull-related accidents. His medical scan authorization showed expired, standard procedure for punishment assignments. A stack of Lucas's tuition receipts formed a worn pile beside his bunk, the paper flimsy with repeated handling. The station's encrypted personnel files unfolded before Viala's ocular implants. 12 other outposts showed identical patterns. Mara Station. A filter technician named Yusra Makanan had developed bioremediation techniques now used in Teresian agricultural hubs, while scrubbing waste pipes on half rations. Zivern platform electrician. Daniel Park's thruster recalibration algorithm was patented under an Imperial officer's name after Park's unauthorized system access conviction. Thomas folded the waiver carefully, creasing the edges with his thumbnail. 62 days remained on Lucas's current semester. Her last message had mentioned field certification testing, the final requirement before xenobiology internship placements. The bursar's office wouldn't hold her seat if his salary deposit stopped. Incident reports from Section 12 populated Viala's neural display. Last month, a human crew caught a thruster backblast during standard maintenance. The station log listed it as operator error, neglecting to mention safety override protocols required Teresian approval, no human possessed. Medical scans showed 3 crew members absorbing ADR ads before the automatic cutoff triggered. Thomas wiped at his coveralls absent-mindedly, streaks of coolant fluid still marking the fabric from yesterday's repair. His toolkit lay open on the floor, each implement placed with ritual precision. The torque driver Lucas had given him for his last birthday sat closest to the bunk, her initials scratched into the handle with a vibroblade. Viala cross-referenced the disciplinary database. 94% of human technical staff had at least one Article 14D citation, the most common offense, exceeding authorized repair parameters. Thomas's 5 infractions all involve stabilizing systems outside his clearance level, including the life support recalibration that saved 12 Teresian officers during the oxygen scrubber failure. The station's external cams showed current conditions in Section 12. Solar winds buffeted the hull plating, stirring eddies of loose particulate against the thruster housings. Standard procedure mandated teams work in 30-minute intervals. Yet the log showed human crews regularly pulling 60-minute shifts to avoid docking repair quotas. Thomas rubbed at his wrist where the radiation band would clamp tomorrow. His 14 auditor log listed 19 ignored requests for updated shielding. The standard issue human suit had 30% less coverage than Teresian models, a compromise officially attributed to species-specific physiological resilience. Viala accessed the medical archives. Human physiology actually absorbed radiation 12% faster than Teresian baselines. The disconnect came from flawed 3rd-century studies where human test groups were compared against Teresians wearing prototype shielding. Nobody had corrected the record in 217 standard years. The station administration feed updated with a new notification. Lucas Harker's academic sponsorship application had been flagged for review, standard procedure when primary sponsors received disciplinary reassignment. Her dormitory access codes would deactivate in 72 hours, unless Thomas secured alternate guarantor status. Work schedules shifted on the overhead displays. Thomas's normal maintenance rotation vanished, replaced by 6 consecutive external shifts. The algorithm helpfully noted this would maximize efficiency before his likely medical downtime. Viala monitored cross-station chatter. 3 other human technicians received similar reassignments within the hour. Thomas packed his tools with slow deliberation. The grease-stained manual went beneath his mattress. Lucas's letters transferred to a sealed alloy case he'd welded from scrap plating years ago. He paused only when reaching his primary wrench, the one with the modified grip that fit his sister's smaller hands during her rare station visits. Viala's decryption routines finally breached the Imperial Education Archives. The files contained 17 documented cases of human innovation being systematically reassigned to Teresian names. Thomas's thruster optimization equations appeared verbatim in Admiral Vey's propulsion thesis, credited as inherited Imperial tactical wisdom. Solar activity alerts flashed across the station network. Section 12's radiation forecast spiked to level orange, right as Thomas's first punishment shift began. Automated systems adjusted the safety timers accordingly, reducing maximum exposure windows by 25%. The human crew manifest didn't reflect this update. Thomas closed his eyes, mentally reviewing the thruster schematics one last time. the routine dangers he could compensate for. What worried him were the dark spots, the systems too damaged or ancient for proper diagnostics. Those required improvisation, and improvisation required time the punishment shifts deliberately denied. Medical logs from last quarter scrolled past Viala's vision. Human technicians logged 4 times as many radiation sickness cases as Teresian crews, yet received half the recovery allowances. The station's automated citation system helpfully noted many injuries occurred while attempting unsafe shortcuts during routine repairs. Lucas's latest letter rustled as Thomas slid it into his breast pocket. She'd drawn their childhood home in the margin, something to remember when the shifts grew long. The corner of the paper bore tiny indents where she'd pressed too hard with her stylus. The station AI pinged Thomas's wrist terminal with the inevitable update. Administrator Holai had approved all reassignments early, effective immediately. His lock cycled open on command, Weber's silhouette filling the doorway with the practiced patience of someone enforcing centuries-old traditions. Outside the observation ports, solar flares licked at Artemis Station's shields. Section 12's warning beacons cast long shadows across the hull plating, each one marking another potential blind spot where regulations outweighed survival. Thomas stood slowly, his calloused fingers brushing the wrench one last time before following security into the corridor. Holai's console displayed alerts from Section 12, radiation levels spiking dangerously near Thomas's work area. The administrator's fingers flexed toward Viala's private terminal, bypassed 17 layers of Imperial encryption protocols. The transmission headers glowed with markings no council member could ignore, live verification of her genetic signature, retinal patterns, and neural frequency. She attached Thomas's entire propulsion analysis alongside fuel consumption reports, letting the numbers speak louder than any petition. The final attachment was his disciplinary record with one annotation. Punishment shift radiation exposure levels compared to Teresian safety standards. Council records showed zero precedent for human-submitted materials reaching Imperial review. The system automatically flagged the submission for preliminary rejection until Viala's override codes dismantled each automated block. The transmission timestamp coincided with Thomas's radiation counter reaching 80% of his permitted quarterly maximum in Section 12.3. Senior advisors mobilized within minutes of receiving the packet. Advisor Kelt's console displayed 4 rapid-fire rebuttals drafted simultaneously, each citing different procedural violations. Advisor Vaughn activated the emergency voting chamber's soundproofing field, physically blocking junior members from participating. Advisor Jax, oldest of the inner circle, simply sent Holai a one-sentence command: isolate the specimen. Viala monitored their reactions through back-channel data taps. Kelt's messages to the Academy chancellors warned of dangerous precedents. Vaughn's private notes referenced the Proxima incident 17 times in 3 paragraphs. Only Jax's search history revealed hesitation. 3 separate queries about historical education reform attempts quickly erased. Thomas's radiation alarm pinged softly against Viala's neural feed. The sound synced with voting chamber notification chimes as the advisors formalized their objections. Kelt cited mental capacity requirements. Vaughn invoked species-specific learning limitations. Jax signed without comment, though his biometrics showed elevated pulse during the authorization scan. The rejection notice appeared in the system, pre-formatted and awaiting final seals. Viala stood slowly in her quarters, allowing the full regalia protocols to activate at last. Royal bioluminescence flared across her skin in patterns unseen for generations, the ancestral markings of direct matrilineal rule. Her next transmission carried no documents, only a live hologram beamed into the voting chamber itself. The Imperial Academy doesn't accept humans, she said. Her projection towered over the advisors, scaled to the chamber's full height. It will accept this one. Kelt's protest died unspoken as system alerts overwrote the session logs. Every propulsion unit on Artemis Station had been running Thomas's algorithms for 47 uninterrupted minutes. Fleet-wide diagnostics confirmed the efficiency gains. Simultaneously, 17 education ministers received priority notifications about sudden funding increases, precisely matching the demonstrated fuel savings. Jax slowly lowered his stylus. His console displayed the Empire's founding charter, Open to Article 1. Advancement through merit sustains the realm. The timestamp showed he'd accessed it 7 minutes before Viala's message arrived. Deep in Section 12, Thomas adjusted his tool harness against the radiation winds. The external comms crackled with overlapping chatter, engineering teams marveling at thruster performance, logistics officers recalibrating supply runs. His exposure monitor counted upward toward the yellow zone. Unaware Administrator Hole's recall order had just cleared medical review. The voting chamber's main display split into quadrants. Left side, Thomas's hand-sketched equations. Right, Imperial Academy admission records with glaring species imbalances. Top real-time fleet diagnostics proving his theories. Bottom, security footage of the alcove where a failing flashlight had illuminated revolutionary genius. Kelt reached for the rejection seal again, then hesitated. The system highlighted an anomaly on his screen. Thomas's second thruster recalibration method, previously dismissed, resolved a vibration issue plaguing Kelt's own flagship for months. Vaughn attempted one last procedural block. The system denied it automatically, highlighting a newly amended rule. All emergency Imperial decrees supersede council voting. Procedures for 48 standard hours. The amendment dated back 312 years to the last time a reigning monarch had exercised direct matrilineal authority, station-wide. Alerts sounded as radiation protocols engaged in Section 12. Thomas's monitor flashed orange, then red. The system automatically locked his harness to prevent movement, standard procedure when levels became critical. 4 decks above, Administrator Hole's terminal displayed 2 live feeds side by side. The emergency recall authorization finally processed, and Royal Guards boarding a shuttle with Imperial Academy enrollment documents. Jack stood abruptly, knocking his ceremonial headpiece askew. His motion to table the rejection passed unanimously, though Vaughn abstained by walking out. The remaining junior advisors, now unblocked from voting, received their own priority message from the docks. Footage of Lucas Harker being escorted from her dormitory by medical staff, claiming sponsorship reevaluation. Viala's hologram didn't smile. Didn't threaten, simply waited as the station's propulsion efficiency metrics updated in real time. 3 million credits now marked for reallocation into education budgets. The numbers refreshed again. Thomas's radiation exposure had stabilized 2 points below permanent injury thresholds. Someone had overridden Section 12 safety parameters 30 seconds before critical levels. Outside the observation windows, communication lasers activated across the fleet, emergency channels reserved for Imperial decrees. The same frequency that had once disseminated nursery rhymes about inferior species now carried syllabi revisions for every Imperial Academy campus. In his alcove, Thomas's abandoned flashlight finally died completely. No more tapping could revive it. Across the station, newly optimized thruster arrays hummed with precision, their energy signatures forming an unintentional symphony of light years beyond. What any manual had ever predicted, the Imperial seal materialized on Thomas's personal display with a harmonic chime no system alert had ever used before. He nearly dropped the radiation-scorched tool he'd been cleaning when the crimson icon bloomed across the screen, its authentication protocols verifying genuine transmission from the matrilineal throne. The message opened to reveal 3 documents. First, his unconditional admission to the Imperial Propulsion Academy's advanced track, backdated to circumvent age restrictions. Second, full family relocation authorization for Lucas, including guaranteed housing near her xenobiology campus. The third attachment displayed the most startling information: previously restricted course catalogs, now marked available across 17 technical disciplines that had been Teresian exclusive for generations. Thomas set down the burnt-out flashlight he'd salvaged from Section 12. His fingers left lingering residue on the tablet, carbon scoring from emergency repairs during his punishment shift. He swiped to the tuition section and froze. The standard fees showed crossed out, replaced by a single line: paid in full via Imperial Decree 44713A. His quarters looked different under the seal's glow. The patched chair where Lucas had studied during visits, the welded alloy case containing her letters, Even his battered toolkit seemed to gleam under the projection's light as it detailed class schedules with his name already enrolled. Station records scrolled automatically. Academic sponsorship transferred. Imperial Office of Meritocratic Advancement. Dependent visa. Reactivated, Lucas Harker, full privileges. Restored, work contract terminated. Reason. Imperial recall order. Thomas tapped the housing provisions. The system displayed Lucas's new accommodations. A Teresian-designed dormitory with atmospheric filters rated for cross-species physiology. Her curriculum appeared alongside it, now including off-world fieldwork previously barred to human students. Somewhere in the station's administrative core, 3 new policy directives were propagating across every Imperial database. Directive Alpha 9 revoked all species-based restrictions on technical education. Directive Beta 3 mandated resource parity across maintenance. Crews Directive Gamma 7 reallocated 3 million credits from propulsion. Budgets into interspecies scholarship funds. Thomas's old manual sat half-packed beside his bunk. He'd been preparing it for storage when the message arrived. The grease stains marking his most referenced passages stood out vividly. Equation corrections that now matched approved academy curriculum. His calloused thumb brushed a margin note Lucas had scribbled years ago. You'll get there faster than they think. Across the galaxy, similar notifications were reaching 97 other individuals flagged in Viala's encrypted audit. A hydroponics technician on Mara Station received Botany Academy access. Zevran Platform's wrongly convicted electrician found his patents reinstated with full royalties. Each message bore the same crimson seal and backdated authority. Thomas opened the equipment manifest for his assigned academy lab. The listed tools included models he'd only ever seen in restricted manuals. Beneath them, a handwritten addendum. Special dispensation, personal field modifications permitted. Ref. Thruster Optimization Case 4471. Thomas stood, his shadow falling across the projection of Earth. Somewhere in that blue curve, his sister Lucas lectured to a mixed-species xenobiology class. The university's first human-tenured professor. Her salary now matched Teresia. The Imperial Archives logged Viala's 3 directives with precise timestamps, each imprint glowing slightly hotter than standard policy seals. The first mandated species-blind testing for all technical positions, its Section 14B overriding centuries of aptitude testing biases. Evaluation criteria now appeared in 17 languages, rather than just High Teresian, with sample questions drawn equally from human repair manuals and Imperial Academy texts. Merit advancement records updated across the network. Human workers previously denied transfer requests now showed automatic reconsideration flags. One file stood out, Mara Station's filtration. Tech Yusra McConnon approved for off-world botanical studies despite the system initially rejecting her application. Mid-transmission before the override, protocols engaged. The technical education funds. Inaugural disbursement went to Tau Ceti's human majority colony. Budget log showed the amount precisely matching savings from Thomas's thruster optimizations. Colony administrators initially questioned the deposit their last funding. Request had been denied for insufficient technical infrastructure. Now the same systems deemed inadequate were receiving upgrade credits under new assessment. Guidelines discrimination. Tribunal cases plummeted as the directives took effect. The sharpest drop occurred after an incident where a Teresian Academy professor failed a human student's propulsion thesis, only for the evaluation algorithm to flag his grading as statistically anomalous. Review logs showed he'd consistently marked human submissions 30% lower on identical rubric items. His reinstatement after retraining coincided with the 72% case reduction. Viala monitored implementation through back channels. Station chiefs dragged their feet reallocating resources. Maintenance logs showed human crews still using patched gloves, while surplus protective gear gathered dust in Teresian storage. She triggered compliance by linking equipment disbursement to administrators' performance bonuses. Within weeks, injury reports declined to parity levels. Personnel files revealed subtle resistance patterns. Human candidates received more rigorous questioning during merit reviews. Their interviews averaged 17 minutes longer than Teresian counterparts. Viala's diagnostics team inserted calibrated response bots into the process. The synthetic applicants faced identical biases, creating an irrefutable dataset that forced interviewer retraining. The throne's ancestral data vaults yielded unexpected complications when cross-referenced with new policies. 7 centuries of meticulously archived council. Decisions contained disturbing consistencies, human-inhabited, sectors routinely classified as requiring greater oversight, their technical achievements systematically downplayed. The earliest records predated the Proxima incident by decades. Former maintenance workers began appearing on advisory boards. Their first joint recommendation, to retire 7 dangerously outdated safety protocols, met immediate resistance from traditionalists. The dissenting opinions crumbled when engineering simulations demonstrated how those same obsolete rules had nearly caused 3 catastrophic reactor failures. Lucas, Harker's xenobiology department became an unexpected test case for cross-species collaboration. Her Teresian co-leader initially insisted on separate equipment for human researchers, until facility usage scans proved intermixed teams produced 40% more publishable results. Their joint study on neural compatibility won Imperial honors despite 3 advisors attempting to split the credit along species lines. Security protocols adapted slower than other systems. Chief Weber's revised training modules reduced intercrew conflicts, but his officers still instinctively scanned human workers more thoroughly at checkpoints. The discrepancy only became visible when biometric scanners logged the unconscious behavioral pattern, data that led to another round of neural recalibration. Drills Viela's private consoles began receiving unusual transmission, ghosts, fragments of encrypted council traffic, referencing historical contingencies. One partially recovered file contained a 200-year-old order to disrupt human technical gatherings, disguised as atmospheric safety alerts. Another showed deliberate miscalibrations of radiation monitors in human work areas, explaining why Thomas's logs never matched official exposure records. The Palace's sealed archives yielded their most damning evidence accidentally. A routine request for pre-Proxima trade agreements pulled corrupted files that gradually self-repaired in Viala's quarantine buffers. The restored documents showed humans had independently developed warp tech, within 10 years of first contact before the hegemony, enforced guided development protocols that limited their advancement. Thomas's institute became a living referendum on the reforms. Its first graduating class included 37 humans who received immediate senior engineering postings, a previously unheard-of ascension. Their performance metrics soon outpaced academy traditionalists, but promotion boards still required imperial mediators to enforce equal consideration. The council's resistance took subtler forms. Budget committees lost funding requests from integrated programs. Networking events scheduled human speakers during off-shift hours. When challenged, administrators produced impeccably reasoned excuses, the same procedural weaponization that had maintained the status quo before directives forced transparency. Viela's ocular implants logged every evasion attempt. The data painted an uncomfortable truth. The Empire's prejudice wasn't incidental but structural, woven into institutions through generations of meticulous bureaucratic reinforcement. Her reforms could mandate equality, but erasing centuries of conditioning required dismantling systems even she hadn't known existed. The final archive discovery came from an unclassified medical server. Cross-species neural studies from 150 years prior proved humans were equally capable of advanced technical thought findings, suppressed because they contradicted educational investment models. The research director's notes admitted plainly. Acknowledgement would necessitate resource redistribution. 3 directives had cracked the system open. The revelations pouring out risked flooding it beyond repair and taking Viala's authority down with them. Every newly uncovered document weakened the throne's historical legitimacy. Counselors watched their Empress dig toward truths that destabilized the Empire's founding myths, calculating how deep she'd go before the collapse became irreparable. Up in the Institute's tower, the original failing flashlight display developed an odd glitch. Its flicker pattern changed whenever researchers uncovered another historical discrepancy. Diagnostics found no malfunction, just an eerie alignment between light and truth. Students started calling it the Justice Metronome, though none could explain why the rhythm matched Viala's recently erratic bioluminescent pulses. His sister's face appeared on a sudden incoming call. Lucas's normally restrained features were alight. The construction drones moved in precise hexagonal patterns across the Institute's central courtyard. Their plasma cutters carved the founding plaque's lettering with micrometer precision, each glyph equidistant despite the radically different alphabets represented. Thomas Harker's name appeared third on the list, its standard English characters standing out among the flowing Teresian script of his fellow honorees. Admission records updated in real time on holographic displays along the colonnade. 500 names from 23 species formed a rotating scroll. The enrollment algorithm showed unusual patterns. Human applicants clustered in engineering tracks. Xantheli biologists paired with Teresian lab partners. Even one Vrix philosopher admitted despite their species' official, non-technical designation. The central sculpture rose 12 meters at the courtyard's heart. Its base held a recreation of Thomas's battered manual, its pages forever open to the thruster equations that changed imperial policy. The upper portion suspended a hyper-realistic replica of his failing flashlight in midair, powered by the very energy-saving protocols its owner had designed. At sunset, the shadows cast by its intermittent beam perfectly aligned with constellations from 17 homeworlds. Lucas Harker walked the perimeter where work crews installed atmospheric equalizers. Her xenobiology cohort included 3 Teresians who'd never shared classrooms with humans before. They paused by a display case containing her brother's original toolkit, the forge marks and salvaged components clearly visible beneath museum-grade preservation fields. One wrench bore tiny initials on the grip. LH, the Institute's propulsion lab, hummed with activity. 17 prototype drives lined testing bays where students from 8 species collaborated. Thomas moved between stations, occasionally reaching to adjust a control with hands still bearing Section 12's faint radiation scars. His academy robe sat slightly askew, the drape never quite conforming to human shoulders like it did Teresian frames. Security Chief Weber's office occupied an unobtrusive corner near the main gates. His disciplinary logs now included cross-species mediation certifications. The wall that once displayed wanted posters held portraits of inaugural faculty instead. His terminal blinked with an incoming query from the old Artemis station, a human tech asking whether flashlight modifications violated equipment codes. The auto-response cited Directive Gamma 7 before Weber manually added, "Use whatever works." Deep in the archives, a classified terminal displayed encrypted council communications. Advisor Jax's latest memo warned about over-accelerated social integration. The system logged 7 deletions before the final version transmitted, containing references to a suppressed historical incident. The drafts referenced Proxima Prime corrective measures and containment protocols, with one line remaining intact. "We cannot afford another breakthrough from unsanctioned quarters." Administrator Hole visited quarterly as required by Imperial Charter. His biometrics showed elevated stress levels whenever passing the main sculpture. The courtyard's acoustics amplified the flashlight replica's faint buzzing, an authentic reproduction of its original failing circuitry. Station logs confirmed he'd ordered 3 separate safety inspections of the display during night cycles. 9 light-years away, Artemis Station's maintenance crews worked under revised protocols. Study alcoves now featured proper lighting and data terminals. The original hatch E-47 remained unaltered, its scorch marks and patched wiring left intact as a historical site. A small plaque noted its significance in Galactic Standard and 17 other languages. The Institute's library contained one unusual artifact beside its stacks of technical manuals. Thomas's grease-stained propulsion text sat in a humidity-controlled case, its margins open to show both his corrections and Lucas's childhood doodles. The display description read simply, "First edition. Donated by the author." At dawn each morning, the central sculpture's light patterns cycled through a precise sequence. For exactly 37 seconds, the duration of Thomas's longest radiation exposure warning in Section 12, the beams dimmed to near darkness. The resulting shadows aligned perfectly with the Foundation plaque's names, illuminating each in turn regardless of species or script. Viala's private observation deck overlooked the courtyard. Her reflection in the transparisteel superimposed royal bioluminescence across the students below. The secure console beside her displayed 2 live feeds, the Institute's bustling corridors, and a restricted council chamber where 3 advisors debated containment measures with increasing urgency. The imperial seals on every doorway bore a subtle modification, the traditional stellar array now, encircling a small stylized wrench. Visitors from 17 species passed beneath it daily without comment, while junior staff whispered about strange energy readings coming from the original flashlight's display case. Diagnostics showed no malfunction, yet its flickering pattern sometimes changed unpredictably during council transmissions. Lucas's research team submitted their first joint paper on the anniversary of the Institute's founding. The Xenobiology Journal's review board consisted entirely of Teresian scholars, all newly appointed under Directive Alpha 9. Their approval notice came time-stamped 0238 station time, precisely when Thomas had once revived his failing flashlight to study by its dim glow. In the central courtyard, the shadows continued their daily march across the plaque's inscribed names. The system controlling their movements required no maintenance, though technicians occasionally noted its power consumption readings didn't quite match projections. The discrepancy equaled precisely 0.3 credits per cycle, the same amount once docked. From human hazard pay for wasteful workarounds, Earth's blue glow washed across the observation deck's transparasteel, highlighting the lingering scar tissue on Thomas's hands where Section 12's radiation burns had healed imperfectly. His institute insignia caught the light, the co-director's crest deliberately redesigned to incorporate a wrench motif, matching the imperial seals. Across from him, Viala's royal bioluminescence pulsed gently in the dimness, no longer masked by disguise stabilizers. The patterns flickered occasionally when she glanced at the encrypted feed from the council chambers. Scrolling on her wrist display, Thomas rotated a spare isolator chip between his fingers, nervous, habit from years of working with failing systems. The new interspecies exchange program files hovered between them, projected against the star field. Enrollment numbers already showed Teresian families hesitant to send offspring to human majority stations, while human applicants exceeded quotas in every technical track. The first Hegemony Academy opened with 3 species, Viala said. Her fingers skimmed historical records showing that original class, all highborn Teresians despite the charter's inclusive language. The projection zoomed in on a footnote, provisional admittance for exceptional cases reviewed annually. They processed 11,000 petitions in the first century, approved 19. Beyond the viewport, Earth's orbital shipyards bustled with activity under revised construction protocols. Human engineers in imperial regalia supervised mixed crews, their directives no longer requiring Teresian countersignatures. Thomas's old radiation band sat in a display case nearby, its digital readout frozen at 97% of his quarterly exposure limit. The accompanying plaque didn't mention the punishment shift or Hole's reluctance to issue the recall order. Viala switched displays to incoming student profiles. A Xantheli applicant's file blinked with admission pending. Their innovative thruster designs bore striking similarities to Thomas's early patchwork solutions. The review board's solitary objection cited lack of conventional credentials. It was the same phrasing used to reject Thomas 17 times. Thomas tapped the isolator chip against his knee, a slow rhythm matching no discernible beat. "You changed the rules," he said. Didn't account for how hard they'd cling to the old ones. His academy robes fell slightly asymmetrical across his shoulders, tailored for human frames but still favoring Teresian cuts. Behind them, the Institute's central tower loomed, its comm arrays now broadcasting exchange program details to sectors that had blocked such transmissions for generations. Security Chief Weber's latest report scrolled past in Viala's peripheral vision. His conflict resolution teams had mediated 14 disputes this quarter, 9 stemming from established faculty resisting integrated classrooms. The report noted a curious pattern. Objections diminished after skeptics witnessed cross-species teams solving complex problems. The data matched historical records from the short-lived interspecies pilot programs abandoned after the Proxima incident. A soft chime signaled incoming council messages. 3 senior advisors had filed emergency appeals against the exchange program's housing provisions. Their argument leaned heavily on a 2-century-old study of species-specific atmospheric needs, research conducted during a solar maximum that distorted environmental readings. The same study had justified separating human and Teresian children in orbital academies. The display case hummed softly with preservation fields, its glass reflecting the Institute's vaulted ceilings. Inside, Thomas's old toolkit lay arranged with museum precision. The forged wrench with its modified grip, the salvaged data spike turned circuit probe, the torque driver bearing Lucas's initials. Students pressed fingerprints against the glass, tracing the carbon scoring where plasma arcs had kissed metal during emergency repairs. One item drew particular attention: a palm-sized isolator chip, its edges worn smooth from years of nervous handling. The placard simply read, "Field modifications require no authorization." Down the hall, seminar rooms paired Imperial engineering manuals with photocopied pages from Thomas's grease-stained notebook. His margin corrections stood out in rust-colored ink where hydraulic fluid had soaked the paper. Students hunched over comparative displays, one side showing pristine academy solutions, the other Thomas's stripped-down equations that achieved identical results with 60% less math. The differences weren't academic. His bypass of the standard plasma damping sequence had reduced thruster failures on 7 stations by 38%. The original failing flashlight occupied center stage in the lecture hall. Rewired to power its own holographic emitter, it now projected Thomas's first academy address. The image flickered authentically whenever the beam weakened, requiring occasional taps to maintain stability, a feature deliberately preserved from its Section 12 days. New students quickly learned the rhythm: 2 quick strikes near the emitter housing when the projection dimmed. The recording always resumed mid-sentence, Thomas's hand gestures unchanged despite the interruption. Makeshift solutions weren't temporary. They were evidence. Maintenance crews across the Empire found their shifts restructured. Where once they'd stolen study time between emergencies, schedules now built in 4 mandatory learning hours weekly, secured by the same directive that funded tool stipends. Early resistance from station chiefs crumbled when efficiency metrics improved. Human crews working educated shifts completed repairs 22% faster, their incident rates dropping to match Teresian teams for the first time. The artifacts told their own stories. A fused relay from Artemis Station bore Thomas's handwriting. Bypassed safeties to prevent core breach 37.2.5. Disciplinary action. 30-day radiation duty. Beside it, Imperial logs confirmed the incident as averted catastrophe, with no mention of the human technician who'd recognized the flawed shutdown sequence. 17 light-years away, Lucas Harker's xenobiology lab kept a different relic on display: her brother's first radiation band, its display frozen at 97%. Her students ran comparative studies on human Teresian cellular regeneration, the research made possible by access to previously segregated medical archives. The band's presence served dual purposes: memorial and calibration device. Its sensor array still detected particulates better than modern equivalents. Back at the Institute, power conduits hummed with Thomas's optimized load distribution. The system self-corrected imbalances whether technicians understood the underlying math or not. Some complained this eliminated diagnostic skill building, until performance reports showed error rates halved under the new protocols. The flashlight hologram reached its signature moment. Thomas held up a salvaged thruster coil during the projection's flicker. This shouldn't have worked. The manual said it couldn't. The image stabilized to show his grease-blackened hands reassembling the component. Manuals don't account for desperation. Shop floors adopted his methods organically. A dock worker on Zevran platform rerouted coolant lines using Thomas's controversial parallel flow technique, a move that would have earned penalties before the directives. Her supervisor found her studying the schematics during mandated education time. The repair cut refueling durations by 19%. Biala's occasional walkthroughs revealed subtle shifts. Teresian academics now paused at displays showing human-adapted tools. Station chiefs grudgingly authorized equipment modifications they'd once banned. And everywhere, in alcoves, cargo bays, even palace service corridors, failing systems received patient scrutiny rather than reflexive replacements. The Institute's most popular exhibit wasn't official. Students had mounted Thomas's old locker door from Artemis Station beside the main lecture hall. Its surface still bore shift schedules scratched in stylus, including the 16 unauthorized study hours he'd logged weekly. Someone had added fresh writing beneath. The most dangerous tool is unused potential. Maintenance crews no longer needed smuggling pockets for manuals. Their updated coveralls included proper tablet sleeves, though veterans still patted their thighs from habit, reaching for texts they'd once hidden from inspectors. The education hours yielded unexpected dividends. 3 human teams working educated shifts independently derived Thomas's thruster optimizations from first principles before ever seeing his notes. The Empire called this progress. Thomas's original tools, lit by the flickering hologram of his words, suggested a simpler truth. Brilliance persisted where systems allowed it to breathe. His wrench still carried Mars Junction's shipyard grime in the groove where his thumb had rested during repairs, a permanent reminder that expertise wore no uniform. On the Institute's founding anniversary, the flashlight projection developed an unscripted variation. During the flicker, a new image surfaced. Thomas in his alcove mid-repair, caught unaware by some long-forgotten security scan. The unguarded expression as he worked told students more than any lecture. The quiet certainty of someone who'd solved impossible problems by refusing to believe they were unsolvable. It lasted precisely 2.4 seconds before the official recording resumed. No technician could explain the glitch or replicate it. Maintenance schedules updated across the Empire. The new codes included Thomas's old locker ID as a hidden tribute. Crews who entered it into shift consoles found their education hours increased by 37 minutes weekly, the exact time he'd stolen each day in Section 12. The artifacts required no explanation. The failing light's persistence, the worn tool's effectiveness, the equations scrawled under pressure, each testified to truths deeper than policy decrees. When students asked why certain displays never received climate controls, the docents had one consistent answer. Some lessons must remain in their original environment. Security Chief Weber's conflict resolution classroom smelled of reheated coffee and ozone from the holographic projectors. The man who once filed 17 reports on suspicious human technical activity now pointed to those same documents on display. Faded security footage showed his younger self interrogating a maintenance worker for unauthorized thruster. Adjustments, the very optimizations, now taught as standard protocol. His lesson plans included unedited disciplinary logs. Students pored over his past citations with colored markers, highlighting prejudicial language patterns. One file stood out, a report where Weber described Thomas's alcove studies as furtive despite no evidence of wrongdoing. The margin now bore Weber's handwritten addendum, assumed guilt based on species, not facts. Student evaluations praised his refusal to sanitize history. Instructor Weber doesn't excuse his past actions, read one typical comment. He makes us calculate their human cost and wasted potential. His most controversial exercise involved role-playing. His old security protocols while classmates attempted creative problem-solving, the inevitable clashes demonstrating how suspicion stifles innovation. The security office's most wanted board had been repurposed. Where fugitive profiles once hung, now it displayed holograms of breakthrough researchers, many from species previously monitored as security risks. The top slot showed a human materials scientist whose nanoceramics revolutionized hull plating. Weber updated the display weekly, ensuring equal representation across all 23 member species. Viala's undercover data proved instrumental in his redemption. When skeptical students questioned whether humans truly faced systemic barriers, Weber accessed her archived scans, decades of maintenance logs comparing resource allocations. The numbers spoke plainly. Human sectors received 40% fewer tool replacements despite handling 60% of hazardous repairs. One particular graph shocked his class, a near-perfect inverse relationship between Teresian oversight levels and crew productivity across 12 stations. Weber kept one personal artifact on his desk, the original termination notice he'd drafted for Thomas. Beside it sat Thomas's subsequent efficiency reports, their equations rendering the disciplinary action absurd in hindsight. Undergraduates doing conflict rotations often paused at this display, some running fingers over the contrast between bureaucratic condemnation and proven genius. His teaching methods drew criticism from traditionalists, Senior advisors protested when he made cadets analyze their own implicit biases through neural scans. The results consistently showed elevated threat responses to human mannerisms. Data Weber refused to bury. "Awareness precedes change," he'd tell objectors, echoing Viala's words from their private reckoning. Security teams under his tutelage developed new protocols. Instead of automatically sealing off human work areas during incidents, they now consulted with on-site technicians first. Initial resistance faded when this halved emergency resolution times. Weber's former deputies, now teaching alongside him, compiled these successes into a damning correlation. Trust increased efficiency more. The Imperial throne room's acoustics changed when Viala ordered the obsidian benches removed. Now Institute graduates stood where courtiers once lounged, their reports punctuated by the clink of tools against coveralls rather than jewelry against silk. The first maintenance worker to address the throne stumbled over protocol, until Viala interrupted, "Just show us the numbers," and he pulled a grease-stained tablet from his pocket with the efficiency statistics. The new imperial seal drew objections from traditionalists. The royal jeweler had protested integrating a wrench motif until Viala produced historical records, showing similar adaptations during the first expansion. Now the modified emblem stamped every education decree, its reformed design barely noticeable beside the more glaring change. Beneath, policy documents signed in both High Teresian and Galactic Standard Advisory Council seats reshuffled, quarterly based on technical merit rather than birthright. The current propulsion specialist was a former waste reclamation worker from Zeta Station, whose thruster optimizations reduced fleet emissions by 11%. She kept an old coolant valve on the conference table, a reminder token from her maintenance days. Junior aides initially dismissed it until she used the valve to demonstrate why Imperial fuel calculations were flawed. Palace guards still wore ceremonial blades, but their orders now prohibited blocking petitioners based on species markers. Human engineers requesting royal audiences no longer faced accidental scheduling conflicts. The change became undeniable when a group of human students presented their neural interface research to the throne, their Teresian professor standing proudly at the rear. Viala's private consoles displayed troubling anomalies beneath these reforms. The Education Initiative's success metrics appeared artificially depressed in reports reaching the council. Station chiefs were classifying maintenance innovations as routine procedures to avoid crediting human teams. And encrypted archives kept revealing historical precedents the Empire had buried, like the century-old human warp prototype that mysteriously vanished after demonstrating superior efficiency. Lucas Harker's xenobiology team visited court to present their neural compatibility findings. Their mixed species delegation attracted stares, not for their diversity, but for their casual handling of equipment that had once been restricted. Lucas adjusted hollow emitters with bare hands where technicians would have used insulated tools. When advisors murmured about protocol breaches, Viala merely requested demonstration of the improved calibration method. The throne's data streams bifurcated strangely during these sessions. Public feeds showed smooth integration progress, while back-channel reports highlighted persistent resistance. Administrator Holai's station recorded 14 instances of human workers receiving proper tools for the first time, but his logs omitted the 2-year backlog of their denied requisitions. Thomas appeared quarterly with Institute updates. His presentations included disruptive elements, showing recovered prototypes alongside their Empire-approved counterparts, or juxtaposing historical rejections with current successes. The throne room's acoustics carried his quiet shifts in terminology. Non-standard solutions became field innovations, then simply better methods. Security Chief Weber's conflict resolution reports revealed subtler shifts. His teams documented 17 cases of Teresian supervisors reluctantly implementing human suggestions and privately admitting improved results. But the neural scans told another story. Residual suspicion patterns still flared during cross-species technical collaborations, measurable even when surface behavior appeared reformed. Viala's nightly briefings included increasingly urgent council memos. Advisor Kelt's latest warned of eroding standards despite hard data showing productivity gains. Vaughn's private notes referenced Proxima protocols with alarming frequency. Only Jack seemed to waver, his queries about neural plasticity studies suggesting dawning realization of his own conditioned biases. The Imperial Archives kept coughing up inconvenient truths. Yesterday's excavation uncovered suppressed proposals from 7 generations past. Human researchers seeking resources their Teresian counterparts received routinely. Each denial cited the same circular logic. Without prior achievements, they couldn't prove their potential. The very exclusion ensured its perpetuation. Palace servants adjusted to the new routines. They now set hydration stations for human physiology alongside traditional Teresian refreshments. But Viala noticed small resistances. The human delegates' chairs always slightly lower, their document copies arriving last. The patterns matched historical records she wished she'd never uncovered. Her most troubling discovery came from a corrupted medical archive. 2 centuries ago, joint human Teresian research teams had nearly perfected neural symbiosis technology. The project vanished from records after demonstrating humans could master advanced concepts as readily as anyone. The lead researcher's final note surfaced accidentally. These findings contradict essential hierarchies. The throne room's new acoustics carried whispers previously swallowed by formal echoes. Now Viala heard every mutter about lowering standards and risking stability. She watched counselors scrutinizing the former maintenance workers with expressions that said what policies no longer could. Thomas's latest visit ended with unusual tension. He'd presented evidence that 7 Teresian innovations were actually human field adaptations rebranded. When advisors challenged him, he simply said, "The Empire kept what worked and buried the origins." His gaze held no accusation, just the quiet certainty of someone who'd repaired broken systems too long to mistake surface functionality for true operation. The palace's oldest servitor droid malfunctioned that night. Its corrupted memory banks spat forth centuries of deleted audience logs, footage showing human petitioners systematically ignored or redirected. The timestamp matched the last known neural symbiosis trials. Viala pieced together the horrifying calculus. Her ancestors hadn't merely wasted human potential. They'd actively suppressed what threatened their hierarchies. Lucas's neural research suddenly seemed more consequential than anyone realized. Her team's compatibility findings suggested humans could integrate with Teresian systems as easily as their innovations had. The implications echoed through every corrupted archive and buried prototype. The Institute's failing flashlight display developed a new glitch. Its flicker pattern now precisely matched the oscillation frequency of suppressed neural symbiosis technology. Diagnostics again found no malfunction. Viala's nightly walk took her past the palace gates where human petitioners once waited for admittance. The new guards stood attentive, but their posture relaxed when she approached. One accidentally called her professor before correcting himself, the title Thomas's students used. His slip carried terrifying promise. The Empire's power structures were fracturing along fault lines centuries deep. The throne's historical projections all pointed toward one conclusion. Every reform triggered hidden resistance mechanisms encoded into imperial bureaucracy itself. The counselors' increasingly frantic memos weren't just bigotry. They were programmed responses to systemic threats. At dawn, Viala studied her reflection in the throne room's polished floors. The royal bioluminescence, patterns marking her lineage, suddenly looked less like decoration and more like circuitry, generational conditioning written directly onto her skin. The Empire's deepest secret wasn't that humans had talent. It was that they'd always posed an existential threat, not through rebellion but through sheer compatibility. Their genius wasn't the exception. It was the template. Viala traced the equations in Thomas's notebook with a finger, her ocular implants overlaying comparative data from imperial propulsion standards. The numbers didn't match. His calculation for plasma exhaust efficiency exceeded official projections by 12%. She cross-referenced his method, a radical recalibration of injector timing that bypassed standard safety buffers. Imperial fuel expenditure reports scrolled across her display. Artemis Station alone burned 18,000 metric tons of refined deuterium per standard year. The fleet-wide total ran to 9 million. She mapped Thomas's modifications across the consumption data. His figures held under multiple simulation parameters. The discrepancy originated in the station's original thruster designs. Safety margins had been calculated using worst-case scenarios from 3 centuries prior, back when Turizian engineers assumed human-piloted ships suffered higher failure rates. Those buffers became permanent specifications, never adjusted even as technology improved. Station archives yielded 7 prior attempts to revise the protocols, all submitted by human technicians, all rejected with identical boilerplate, insufficiently vetted methodology. The oldest dated back 26 standard years, a proposal from a mechanic named Shaw that could have saved 2 million annual credits. The denial notice cited unrealistic projections. Fiala ran Thomas's current equations through the imperial verification algorithm. The system flagged no errors, though it did note the solution pattern resembled Academy Advanced Concepts. His version used simpler math than the standard imperial models, streamlining 13 calculation steps into 5 by treating plasma turbulence as a harmonic phenomenon rather than random energy loss. A search of restricted academic databases revealed why Thomas's method matched unpublished research from the Imperial Propulsion Institute. Their classified findings confirmed the efficiency gains, though their solution required 30% more hardware than Thomas's field adaptation. The Turizian scientists had presented their work as a breakthrough requiring fleet-wide retrofits, never mentioning human techs had discovered comparable results using existing equipment. Fiala pulled cost projections for both approaches. The Imperial retrofit would cost 4.2 million credits per cruiser. Thomas's version required only software updates and timing recalibrations, 97% cheaper. Education budget reports appeared next in her neural feed. The Empire currently allocated 2.8 million credits annually for interspecies learning initiatives, barely funding one mid-sized academy. 3 fully resourced education centers, serving all 23 client species, required precisely 3.1 million. Fuel consumption patterns told the final piece. Thomas's optimizations applied equally to civilian and military vessels. Implementing them across just Artemis and 3 sister stations would yield 3.4 million in annual savings, enough to revolutionize the entire Empire's education. Infrastructure Administrator Holai's correspondence. Logs surfaced a telling exchange. 2 years prior, another human technician had suggested similar thruster adjustments. Holai's response: typical human wishful thinking, they always aim beyond their station. The mechanic, a specialist named Patel, had been reassigned to waste reclamation duties the following week. Fiala closed the projection displays. The numbers formed an indisputable chain, from Thomas's grease-smudged notebook to fleet-wide policy shifts. No theoretical argument could refute the math. Yet for centuries, those same figures had been dismissed without review, buried under layers of bureaucratic inertia and ingrained prejudice. 3 million credits. The sum floated in her thoughts as she studied Thomas's original notes again. His handwriting showed no resentment, only meticulous care in each derivation. The margins held practical reminders like check injector seals on Deck 7-1 and Lucas's tuition due next cycle. A new query brought up historical education budgets. The current allocation matched what the Empire spent annually on ornamental gardens at the Imperial Palace. Another search revealed the cost of her own royal shuttle's last refit, 2.9 million credits for gilded exterior panels that served no functional purpose. Thomas's personnel file updated with an alert. His punishment shift in Section 12 had commenced. External cams showed him suited in the under-armored human-rated gear, maneuvering along the hazardous thruster housings he understood better than any Academy graduate. The station's expenditure tracker ticked upward with each wasted watt of energy, the inefficiencies he'd solved but couldn't implement without official sanction. Fiala's fingers moved unbidden to her disguise stabilizer. For the first time, she considered deactivating it voluntarily, revealing her true markings right there in the maintenance alcove where one man's genius had gone unrecognized. An incoming message interrupted the thought. Security Chief Weber's latest report flagged Thomas's activities as suspected intellectual property theft. The accompanying recommendation suggested neural scans to determine if he'd accessed restricted databases, a procedure known to cause permanent memory damage in humans. The fueling algorithms, On her screen continued their wasteful calculations, burning credits by the second. Somewhere beyond the station's hull, Thomas worked under lethal radiation levels to maintain the very systems that could be revolutionized by equations written in his own hand. Viola opened an encrypted channel to Artemis Station's mainframe. Her authorization codes bypassed 14 layers of security protocols, the highest Imperial clearance possible. She initiated 2 parallel actions: a full implementation of Thomas's propulsion algorithms across all station systems, and a priority meeting request with Administrator Holai. The meeting notes included one unusual attachment: a classified fuel consumption chart comparing current waste to projected savings, with a small handwritten annotation in the executive summary. The price of keeping power is paid in lost opportunities. Today that bill comes due. Her stylus hovered over the transmission key for 3 steady breaths before committing. The system logged the data transfer at precisely 2:08 station time, 37 minutes before. Thomas's radiation exposure window reached critical levels in Section 12. The armored case clicked open beneath Viola's fingertips, revealing identity documents untouched for solar cycles. The Imperial seal gleamed under the compartment's sterile lighting, her true bioluminescent patterns preserved in holographic verification strips. She withdrew the quantum-locked data crystal containing Thomas's analysis last, the weight incongruously light for what it carried. Administrator Holai's career file scrolled across her display, a chronicle of calculated obstinance. 7 documented instances where he'd blocked human promotions despite technical qualifications. His personnel evaluations praised adherence to traditional structures and resistance to destabilizing influences. The most recent noted his refusal to implement a reactor safety upgrade because the submitting engineer lacked proper academy credentials. The meeting request pinged through Holai's private terminal with maximum priority encryption. Viola attached the data crystal without commentary, though she included one unusual edit to standard protocol: her true Imperial ident codes buried in the metadata. Not enough to trigger automatic alerts, but sufficient for any administrator paranoid enough to run deep verification scans. Security feeds showed Holai's initial reaction. His fingers froze midway through signing a fuel requisition when the alert chimed. His eyes flicked to the embedded sender codes, first confusion, then dawning recognition. The administrator's hand moved to his emergency comm unit before hesitating. Slowly, deliberately, he removed his security earpiece and placed it in the desk's signal-blocking drawer. Viola disabled the last of her disguise stabilizers while crossing the administrative sector. Teresian honor guards would already be en route from her flagship, though she'd ordered them to hold position for precisely 14 minutes. Enough time for this conversation to unfold without ceremonial interruptions. The molecular recoil of shifting back to full Imperial stature sent cracks through her diplomatic footwear. Holai stood when she entered, his posture caught between protocol and shock. His eyes darted to the now glowing markings along her neck, patterns impossible to fake outside royal bloodlines. The data crystal sat activated on his desk, projecting Thomas's propulsion equations alongside the cost-benefit analysis. "Your Majesty," Holai managed after 2 false starts. His fingers brushed the denial form he'd been preparing for Thomas's latest transfer request. The motion was subconscious, immediately regretted when Viola's gaze tracked to it. She didn't sit, didn't acknowledge the courtesy title, just tilted her head toward the projection. "Run the 3rd simulation again." The numbers reshuffled: fuel savings across 6 deployment cycles, maintenance reductions, the staggering education budget implications. Holai's jaw worked silently as the projection solidified. His aircar purchase from last quarter had cost precisely 0.7% of what this single optimization could recover annually. "With respect," Holai began. "There is none in that phrase," Viola observed mildly. She tapped the desk interface, summoning Thomas's disciplinary record. "Explain why a man who corrects Imperial Academy errors belongs on external hull maintenance." The Institute's failing flashlight exhibit developed an unexplained behavior. Whenever council members visited, its flicker pattern shifted to mirror brainwave oscillations associated with cognitive dissonance. The failing flashlight's beam had illuminated equations the Empire insisted couldn't exist. That flickering light revealed more than propulsion theories. It exposed centuries of wasted potential hidden in maintenance alcoves. Thomas's grease-stained manual now rests in the Imperial Museum, its corrected formulas displayed beside the tools that earned him punishment. The alcove where he studied remains preserved, scorch marks and all. Visitors tap the replica flashlight twice like he did, watching as unstable light brings revolutionary math back to life. Change came not through grand speeches, but through quiet persistence, a stubborn refusal to stop working even when the light failed. The Empire assumed darkness meant nothing worthy existed there. The truth was simply waiting for someone to look closer. Lucas Harker's xenobiology lab looked nothing like the segregated facilities of 5 years prior. Teresian researchers passed neural scanners to human colleagues without the old hesitation. Stools stood adjusted for both species' heights. The air filters cycled at a blended frequency that kept everyone comfortable. Their latest study spread across 7 displays, neural response patterns showing nearly identical synaptic adaptability between humans and Teresians. The variants measured less than early Imperial studies claimed. The Imperial Science Prize citation called their joint paper groundbreaking. The lab's veterans knew better. Buried in palace archives were 12 similar studies suppressed over 2 centuries. Lucas kept one restored copy as reference, its conclusions identical despite using archaic terminology. The prize ceremony footage showed something more revealing than the award itself. Teresian academics fully crediting human methodology instead of reframing discoveries as their own. Children's textbooks updated quietly across the Empire. New editions reduced Proxima coverage to 1 paragraph, while dedicating whole chapters to the flashlight breakthrough. Diagrams showed Thomas's makeshift repairs in exact detail. The spliced wiring, the tapped power cell, even the grease-stained equations that disproved Imperial assumptions. Teachers noted students often lingered on those pages longer than required. The Imperial Museum devoted an entire wing to the new meritocracy exhibit. Thomas's original manual sat encased beside the tools that had once gotten him warnings for unauthorized modifications. The grease marks he left during emergency thruster repairs remained visible, despite preservation efforts. Visitors often touched the glass, near his handwritten corrections, fingers, tracing where someone had insisted on better mathematics, despite centuries of being told they couldn't comprehend it. Behind the scenes, Viala's decrypted data played an unexpected role. The cache of hidden efficiency reports and suppressed research became standard curriculum for Imperial policy courses. Students analyzed how prejudice had wasted tangible resources, like the human-developed warp stabilizers rejected for being too advanced for field crews, leading to 3 needless engine failures. Hard numbers made abstract injustice impossible to ignore. Lucas's neural scans showed something subtler than compatibility. When human and Teresian researchers worked together, brain activity spiked in regions tied to creative problem-solving. Her team's replicated studies confirmed it. Collaboration yielded innovations neither group produced alone. The Institute incorporated these findings into training protocols, though palace advisors still tried to frame them as complementary differences rather than fundamental equality. Thomas's old radiation band became an unauthorized teaching aid. Professors used its frozen 97% reading to demonstrate how safety regulations had deliberately endangered human crews. The math showed clearly. Permitting exposure levels 20% beyond Teresian limits while providing inferior protection couldn't be accidental. Students started noticing similar patterns in other regulations, building case studies that filled research databases. The palace didn't advertise how Viala's disguise logs changed academic standards. Her ocular implant recordings of Thomas's alcove became mandatory viewing for engineering ethics courses. Students saw genuine innovation occurring in squalor, then compared it to stations where similar brilliance was still wasted today. The contrast generated uncomfortable discussions about unrecognized talent in their own facilities. Children formed the most unexpected verification network. School assignments required interviewing relatives about workplace contributions. Human students returned with stories of uncredited fixes and suppressed suggestions. Teresian children brought confused accounts of parents muttering about overqualified maintenance crews. Teachers compiled these anecdotes into datasets that mirrored Viala's official findings, not former maintenance. Workers now held advisory roles across the Empire. Their first unanimous recommendation was installing study nooks in every workplace. The proposal cited hard metrics. Educated crews fixed problems 30% faster with 50% fewer injuries. No traditionalist could refute the numbers, though some insisted the spaces looked undignified. The Institute's failing flashlight display developed a new quirk. Each night at 0238 station time, when Thomas had originally been caught studying, it projected unscripted footage from the pre-reform era. Clips showed human ingenuity everywhere the Empire claimed it couldn't exist. The system administrator couldn't explain this programming anomaly, though students noticed it always targeted disciplines still resisting integration. Lucas kept her brother's first academy rejection letter on display. The official reason, insufficient foundational knowledge, contrasted starkly with his later achievements. Visitors studied it alongside his breakthrough equations, many unconsciously reaching toward their own hidden projects. The letter's edges were worn from handling, its creases deepened by generations of fingertips tracing bureaucratic words that could no longer suppress truth. Hard data became the Empire's most effective reform tool. You couldn't argue with repair logs proving human-led crews completed jobs faster. Neural scans left no room to claim certain species thought differently. And the children's history books made certain no one would forget where real progress began. In a cramped maintenance alcove, under a failing light, with math scrawled in margins no one was supposed to read. The original flashlight now rested in a place of honor at the Institute's entrance. Visitors instinctively tapped its casing twice as they passed, a tradition no one mandated but everyone followed. The light always brightened briefly in response, though engineers swore its power source couldn't explain the phenomenon. Students whispered it recognized those willing to see brilliance where others saw only grease-stained coveralls. The maintenance alcoves looked different now. What were once cramped spaces for stolen study sessions now featured proper lighting, data terminals, and in some sectors, even basic tutoring holograms. The upgrade orders specified standardized education nooks, but left implementation details to local crews, resulting in makeshift solutions Thomas would recognize. A fuel technician on Zevran platform welded old storage containers into study booths. A hydroponics specialist on Mara Station repurposed irrigation timers as learning session alarms. Imperial auditors initially dismissed these adaptations as wasteful. Then the productivity metrics arrived. Stations with study nooks showed 18% faster repairs and 32% fewer minor incidents. Within a standard year, even the most traditional shipyards begrudgingly allowed modifications, though some insisted. Teresian crews received slightly larger booths. Viala's historical scans identified 214 similar cases of buried brilliance. A water reclamation tech had developed purification filters now used in orbital gardens. Her patents filed under a supervisor's name. A dockworker's load distribution algorithms reduced cargo handling injuries by 40%, then got reassigned for exceeding authorization. The belated recognitions unfolded quietly, without ceremony. Compensation settled into backdated pay supplements rather than public apologies. The economic impact became undeniable. Fleet-wide efficiency gains added 14% to the Hegemony's gross output within 2 fiscal cycles. The propulsion savings alone funded 17 new technical schools and former labor colonies. Analyst reports praised workforce optimization without detailing whose workforce had been previously undervalued. 2 artifacts shared a display case at the Imperial Innovation Institute's entrance. On the left, Viala's original disguise kit, its molecular skin modulators still bearing stress fractures from emotional spikes. On the right, Thomas's salvage tools, the welds and modifications clearly visible under preservation fields. Between them, a single interactive panel played alternating footage, the Empress's first incognito observations of human sectors, and Thomas's thruster repair demonstrations. Students passing the exhibit often paused at a particular moment. The footage showed Viala's ocular implant scan confirming Thomas's math was correct, while station records simultaneously listed his work as unverified. The cognitive dissonance hung palpable in air. Deep in restricted archives, 3 advisors reviewed contingency protocols from the Proxima era. The documents specified containment measures for unsanctioned innovation and cross-species capability alignment. One line recurred verbatim across centuries of updates. maintain disparity in educational provisioning. The most recent edit timestamp matched the week before the first study nooks appeared. Station manifests told a subtler story. Human crews now receive proper tools, but supervisors still assigned them 30% more hazardous repairs than Teresian teams. The work orders justified this with circular logic. Greater experience with risky procedures made humans better suited for them. Nobody documented how that experience was acquired. Fiala's private feeds showed a chilling pattern. Every breakthrough from recognized human researchers coincided with a classified council session. The discussion logs were encrypted, but neural scans of exiting attendees revealed elevated stress biomarkers. Their physiological responses matched combat veterans recalling traumatic events.